Now it's important to give the floor to His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Maait, Minister of Finance. Peace be upon you and good morning. My speech has been is written in English. I will talk in English, but after I finish my speech, because it is related to the subjects that are going to be tackled today, I'm going to give you a brief idea about what we are doing in the meantime, and you can see through the coming weeks and the coming in the near future.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished members of our Parliament, Ambassador, senior officials from Ministry of Finance and Egyptian Tax Authority. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this important conference entitled Fiscal Policy, Critical Taxation Themes for Egypt. And during the past 2 years, the Egyptian government started a comprehensive economic and social reform program that aims at enhancing competitiveness of the Egyptian economy, addressing macroeconomic imbalances, upgrading our infrastructure base and public services, and improving our human capital base. This reform program helps Egypt to achieve its sustainable development goals, targets, and contribute gradually to better living conditions for our people. Particularly, Egypt fiscal reform aims at improving the structure of the budget while allowing the redirection of part of the savings to finance a number of human capital and social programs. A key pillar of this reform is the modernization of the tax regime. Tax is indeed a key part of our fiscal reform agenda, given its contribution to our budget revenues. Tax represented around 75% of the budget for the fiscal year 2018-2019. Therefore, strengthening the tax system is a key priority and a core part of the Sustainable Development Goals for Egypt 2030 vision. Our vision is to set a stable tax policy in both the short and medium term to be able to achieve the fiscal, economic, and social objectives of the tax and raise tax revenue ratio to GDP up to 1% annually to reach approximately 18% by fiscal year 2022. Realizing Egypt's tax potential requires policy reform, tax administration reform, and institutional reform, such as issuing medium-term revenue strategy, MTRS. We are currently working on preparing our first MTRS in the coming period. A stable and clear tax policy is a key for attracting investment, creating jobs, and supporting growth. Implementing tax policies that protect and widen our tax base and at the same time promote inclusive growth is a challenging task. Therefore, our tax reform agenda has been guided by the following: broadening the tax base for modernizing our current tax legislation and policies in line with international best practice, improving effectiveness and efficiency of our tax system by simplifying, automating, and streamlining tax procedures, enhancing tax administration and upgrading skills of our people through the implementation of an ambitious tax administration modernization. Over the past 2 years, we succeeded to introduce a modern VAT system that brought most services into the tax net, reduced the list of exempted goods, and unified the tax rate. We also increased excise taxes on cigarettes, tobacco, and alcoholic beverages. The taxation of multinational enterprises is key to domestic resource mobilization in Egypt, as it represents over 80% of the tax base. Conservatively estimated base erosion and profit shifting BEPS by multinational enterprises causes an annual revenue loss of around $100 to $240 billion internationally. The impact of BEPS on developing countries as a percentage of tax revenue is estimated to be even higher than in developed countries. Therefore, we have aligned our tax reform agenda with international best tax practices through joining the international community in the fight against tax evasion and tax avoidance by becoming a member of the inclusive framework on base erosion and profit shifting PIPs in May 2016 to tackle tax avoidance and evasion. In August 2016, Egypt joined the Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information, implementing international standards for transparency and exchange of tax information. In June 2017, Egypt signed the Multilateral Convention to implement tax treaty-related measures to prevent PEPs and complying a modern transform pricing regime to support fair and effective taxation, particularly for multinational enterprises, through the issuance of the Egyptian Transfer Pricing Guidelines in October 2018, which introduced a requirement for country-by-country reporting, one of the requirements of the inclusive framework, as well as advanced pricing agreement system. I stand in front of you today to announce our full support and commitment to these reforms, as well as our future commitment and reform plans. Let me now turn to Arabic language. This is written, yes, exactly. خليني أقول
Let me say that there are lots of important points that I would like to talk about. I think concerning Egypt and also for the taxation system especially. I think that throughout the 3 years, Egypt adopted a reform program, and this reform program, I consider it a very tough program, and it was a difficult one. But it put Egypt in a position that we ourselves, we can see and feel its impacts. I said it many times before when we submitted the international shares in the past few weeks. We were thinking that we are going to ask for about $3 million shares. Then at 10:35, that means that Europe was not open yet, and the United States of America were still sleeping. From 10:35 till 11 o'clock, about 25 minutes, we found that $3 million were totally covered, and they were coming from East Asia. So for us, it was an indication that we did not believe ourselves. At 11, Europe was opened at 3 o'clock p.m. We found the demand on the Egyptian shares from $3 million to $15 million. I remember that at 11 o'clock I said, wow, we now covered the $3 million. I'm going to attend my other meetings, and we were doing this here in Egypt. We did not travel anywhere. The only thing that we did, that we traveled to some Asian market. This time we decided to change, not to go to Europe or the United States. We went to Asia, to Japan, to China, to Hong Kong. Maybe we said to do something different. So by 11 o'clock, the $3 million were covered in only 25 minutes, and that's what we asked for. So I told them, okay, bye-bye, I'm leaving, and I'm going to see my other meetings. At 3 o'clock, I found that they were calling me, telling me, come quickly, because the demands jumped from $3 million to 15. Last year, we were asking for $30 million, and we closed at 10 o'clock p.m. And let me tell you that around 4 o'clock, the request was about $2.7 million. At 4, that's last year. This year, at 3 o'clock, they phoned me and they called. There is a request for the Egyptian shares, $15 million, which is 5 times the number that we are asking for in the morning. Because it was in a place far away from my office. When I arrived there, it was 4 and 10 minutes, 10 past 4. From 10 past 4, the request jumped to 21.5, and now the USA is opening, and the experience tell you that what you got from Europe and from Asia, you're going to get double of what you get from USA. So now I told them to lower the interest about 40 basis points and we found the people, they are still there, and we found that most of the requests on the shares 10 and 30. We were offering 5, 10 and 30. People were buying the share or requesting on the shares 10 and 30 years. I said it's now 10 past 4, we are closing, and then we took the decision that we can jump to $40 million. Why I'm saying this? I'm saying that this is because the result of our work in the past 3 years. This is the result of our effort, because the international society, the investors, they believed us. They believed that we are working very hard, that we are committed, that we are working on the reform. We were adopting reform programs, because at that day we saw investors that we didn't see before. We saw the engagement of the Japanese banks that we didn't see it before. The request for the Egyptian shares is double the number of the last year. The flow of the investors that we saw that were asking for the Egyptian fund, they asked to come and sit with you and talk to you. The other thing that I'm giving them prices lower than the market. I'm telling you this because this is the interpretation of the economic reform that Egypt adopted, and actually we are feeling now the impact of the reform. I say that the 6 months from May to December, or this period of time, was of the most difficult period of time for the countries whom adopted the reform from among Egypt. And we see that the margin market is close to $5 trillion. They left the margin market for many reasons, from among the high liquidity, the confusion, and the trouble that occurs in some countries like Argentina and like Turkey. And on the other side, that the United States of America, they increased the interest, and plus there is a kind of tension between the USA, Europe, and the USA and China. So from among also that we are coming close to the second half, to the second half of the financial year. It affected us as well as affecting the startup markets, and this is the first thing. The second point, we found that some countries that the USA raised the interest 3 times. Argentina raised about or increased the interest by 20%. Also Turkey raised the interest from 18 to 24. We found that the countries around us, they are not stable, and I found people that they are saying that they give we found also the market is demanding a high interest. So what's going on globally is impacting the Egyptian market. So we put the budget depending on a fixed interest. So we found that the interest is increasing in a very worrying way. And we found also the price of the petrol that reached for about $78, and the budget was set on $76 per barrel. That put the Egyptian economy under great pressure. At the same time, we agreed with the fund to achieve certain objectives, and we have interest 2.2%, and the revenue tax 27%. I would like to tell you that the economic reform, although this stress, I saw days that the market is asking for an interest rate 22 and 25%, and the budget is set on an interest of 14%. I found that the price of the petrol barrel was asked to be on $78, and the budget was on $71. The budget was set that the price of the dollar will be 17 Egyptian pounds, and what we saw that the dollar was for about 18 Egyptian pounds. But I would like to tell you something, that by the end of the year, we agreed with the Monetary Fund that Egypt on the 31st of December to achieve about $15 million. What we achieved is 31. The tax revenue that was achieved was $304 billion. The deficit of the total deficit was 5.6, and we reached about 7.5. We agreed on this points on March. It was just giving messages, delivering messages that the Egyptian economy passed a very critical exam, that some countries that they had a stronger economy rather than Egypt could not pass. We saw that some countries like Brazil and like South Africa, they were increasing their interest. Actually, what we did is to maintain our stability, and the fiscal policy maintained its policy, and the Egyptian society witnessed how the Egyptian market was stable to an extent. After we passed this exam and we opened the new financial year, we started seeing a new picture. For sure, you can see this in the relation of the transfer pricing. You can follow this up in the indicators of the budget. If we can take this as an indicator that the Egyptian economy, how is the Egyptian economy? So please put it in your consideration. Take it as an indicator. And here I'm telling you on the 19th of March 2019, away from the end of the financial year, about 3 months, I'm telling you now that we are on track, because the objectives we are actually achieving the objectives of the budget. But we are saying now, last year, I asked the parliament in order to take approval on different projects. So I went to the parliament telling them, these numbers I will not be able to implement. I want more credit. When I'm sitting now with you, I'm telling you, thank God, I don't need to go to the parliament anymore. The price of the interest that was 14%, I need more. No, I'm not going to do so. We were able to manage. We were able to achieve the objectives, and thank God, while we are sitting now, I'm telling you that our situations and our policymakers are stable, because the investor is always worried what's going on in Egypt. I just wanted to convey this message after 6 months, the difficult 6 months, not only on Egypt but on many countries. But the only difference is that Egypt, the very difficult economic reform that we adopted, were able to keep the stability of the market. And once we were able to maintain this kind of stability, we were able to see the trans pricing, and we were able to see that we are implementing the reform, the updated fiscal policy, that we were able to achieve our objectives and to complete with an effective performance. Let's go back to the critical taxation themes.
Because other countries have other things to represent the biggest share of the tax revenues. We have done a lot during the last 2 years, and Dr. Amr al-Munayir is here with us, and we were member of the parliaments, and they issued the VAT tax. They wanted to restructure the authority and the Inlest and Young project to re-engineer the tax procedures. As a minister, I built on what they did with Dr. Amr al-Garhi and Mr. Amr al-Munayir. So we finished the structure. We have one structure for the tax authority, and the central organization, or the central agency for organization, approved that. So we have one authority for VAT and income tax, and Young project was also done, and in the second phase we need to translate this. You need to set the structure, and then you need to issue the law of the unified tax procedure, and we send this to the NGO. We worked on the remarks, and now we are just reviewing the remarks in order for it to be sent to the cabinet. Third, we need to automate and digitize all the instant young studies. And yesterday we chose the company which will be responsible for this process. We will task the company to start all the procedures to automate unified tax procedures. In addition, we are looking or taking many things into consideration. First, we had to tackle with the law of exempting 90% for delays and fines for 1 month and a half, and the outcome was about 14 billion EGP, and we left 7 billion, and we got 7 other billion for the Egyptian treasury, and this is a big achievement because this enabled us to solve many problems. Second, we had to tackle the bond tax, and the Egyptian treasury suffered a lot. A new law was issued, and we talked to the union of banks and different public bodies, and the issue was lowered. All the executive procedures was done in cooperation with the union of banks, and this is about to be issued to the public. Next, the transfer pricing was a big achievement. I also want to refer to something that is very important, which is to amend Law 91 of 2005, because we either need to modify it or to issue a new law, and we will try to do so in this year. Last law, which is very important, which is the law on e-commerce and taxation of websites and social media, along with many other issues to be discussed today. What I really want to say in this regard is that yesterday I had a meeting with a team of the IMF, the tax department, and then they conducted an excellent study. This study includes many brilliant ideas for short and medium term till 2030. So tax policies are widely covered, and we will receive a team from the IMF very soon to work on tax administration. Taxation is a top priority in the government, and during the coming period we will work on the implementation of all the procedures I referred to in my speech, and I think that presidential directives um, wants us to finish this by the end of June 2020 in order to follow up on the reform agenda. We have a reform agenda for customers, for real estate tax, for public funds, and now we are working on a new law for public funds, and this will be discussed in this parliamentary session. We would also tackle real estate tax in order for it to be discussed and then sent to the parliament. We have a law for SMEs, which is about to be finalized, and I think by next week we might announce the draft bill, including the tax treatment and the tax incentives for micro enterprises, small and medium enterprises. We have many incentives for different tracks, and we have been discussing this with the Ministry of Trade and Industry, with Prime Minister. The cabinet is discussing this law. We have formed many committees for this regard, and I think by the end of the coming week we will announce the draft bill in order for it to be sent to the parliament to be discussed and approved. And I think this is a breakthrough as it includes many incentives for the informal sector to be included in the formal sector. We have incentives for customers, for finance, for taxes. This is a complete draft. Of course, nothing is perfect, but we have been working hard for 3 years, and this work brings together the Ministry of Investment, of Finance, of Trade and Industry. Sorry for taking too much time, but let me tell you, in all fairness, this is just part of our agenda. Our agenda is dense, and I hope that I might get another opportunity a month later to brief you on the updates. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, the Minister, for your insightful and informative presentation. We are very optimistic now because of the achievements made